Welcome then to the first part of today's webinar, where we're going to be looking at the OpenCRM GDPR Data Retention Wizard. Now, the Data Retention Wizard is an extension of OpenCRM's powerful automation and workflow functions. Specifically here, we're allowing you to be able to set your own rules within the system that are used to aid your own data processing and data retention policy. Now some of the areas that we're going to look at here, setting up automation and workflows within your OpenCRM system can potentially have some wide-ranging and overarching effects and consequence on the data that you hold. As such, the first thing that we recommend is that as an organization internally and as part of your GDPR compliance, outside of OpenCRM, you agree your own internal data processing and data retention policies, just to make sure that you've considered every angle and what you're going to then affect within OpenCRM is in line with what you as an organization and as part of your compliance have set up and agreed. Typically, these sorts of conversations are going to happen at a managerial and a board level because they're going to have overarching effects across your organization. As I just said there, these rules can be quite serious in nature and should be carefully considered. The main reason being that some of the effects which can be made off the back of these rules may not be able to be reversed by our support team. But as always, once you've got those rules in place, those ideas, you want to start implementing that into OpenCRM. If you are unsure, please reach out to any member of the OpenCRM team. They'll be able to signpost you to the right point of contact, at which point we can offer you some advice and guidance, as well as, if required, some dedicated support to help you implement those rules into the system in a way that works for you and your organization. With that being said then, let's jump into taking a look at how we set up these rules within OpenCRM. Now, typically these are going to be held within our settings area and going to be available to people with administrative permissions. So from your system, first place to go is the top right-hand side of the screen, jumping into our settings area. Once in, we're going to scroll down the page here so we get to our workflow and automation tab. Underneath here, we've got workflow, and if we expand this out, you'll see here we've got our data retention rules option. Once selected, you will be greeted with a confirmation message. Again, just highlighting that some of the functions within this that we're going to cover shortly are very powerful and can have overarching effects and consequences on the data that you hold within the system. So just another fail-safe to make sure that only the right people in your organization are accessing this area. Once in then, again at the top, another message there just to highlight that point. Some of this can be very consequential, and we do have a link out to our FAQ here, which alongside this webinar is a great resource to use when building your own data retention rules. So within this area then, we can currently see that we've got a couple of example rules set up. Now, if I wanted to create a new rule, I can simply select my new tab here, and I'm presented with the top level of all of the rules which I've currently got set up. So I can see the name of my rule. If I'd like to add a more detailed description about what that rule is set up to do or the purpose that it holds, I can see the module at which it affects. So we can set these rules up across the whole system. Specifically, areas such as this, we're going to be looking at leads, contacts, and companies. You can see the two rules that we've got set up here currently are for the leads module. You see these two are currently set as not active. So another part of this, again, setting up those rules and working to make sure that they're right for your organization, so you can draft them. So you don't have to have them active straight away. You can work on them, keep them as unactive, knowing that those consequences, those rules are not going to action in the system. On the right-hand side then here, we have the ability to edit, duplicate, and delete our rules, as well as to be able to audit them. So once we go into our audit log for that rule, you'll be able to see who set them up, any changes that have been made, just to give you that complete history of those rules that have been set up, when, how, and who by. We also have our test rule functionality here. We're going to have a look at that just towards the end of this clip, once we've had a look at setting up our rule. So what we're going to do, we're going to jump into one of the rules which we've already got created, which is our example data retention rule here. I'm simply going to jump into the edit area. Again, we're presented with our screen for creating our rule. And again, the information at the top here relating to the severity of what we can create, but also the link out to FAQ to support us through the process. So some of the features that we saw on the previous page, the descriptions of our rules, this is where we set them. So we can select which module, give our rule a name, give it a more detailed description if we would like to, as well as having the ability to select it as active or not. So currently, this one's inactive. I simply tick the box to set this one as active. Within my rule then, I want to run my rule against certain conditions. Now these conditions can be set here, and we can add a number of conditions that work together to form an AND rule, or we can have a single condition if required. So we can see at the moment for this rule, if my lead has a rating that equals cold, and its last action date is before a year ago, so they haven't had action in a year, that is going to be the two conditions that need to be met for this rule to be run. Once we've met those conditions, we then need to say what is going to happen, what action is going to be carried out. So we can see here, we've got an action running here, and the action is to add a warning. Now, if I select this drop down, we're going to see the variety of different actions that we can trigger off the back of certain conditions being met. So for example, for this particular rule, we're going to do something quite soft. We're going to add a warning. We can send a notification as well. Again, these are quite soft and probably what we would suggest setting up in the immediate term, setting up these rules so that either everybody is notified that this data is coming up against our data processing rules, or we can send a notification to a designated person who can then action your policy off the back of that condition being met. If we've got a regimented process, which means that we would like to remove data, again, we have options there that are a little bit harder, a little bit more sort of consequential effects within the system. For example, we might want to clear selected fields on that record, we might want to delete it, or eventually we might want to completely wipe the audit log. Again, some of these more harder actions may not be able to be undone by our support team. So again, when putting those into place, just have careful consideration to make sure that, A, the policy is there correctly, and also that the rule is set up correctly within OpenCRM. Once our conditions and our actions have been set, we can then go on and save our data retention rule. Now, when we click save, we're going to be greeted with, again, another warning message. When we select OK, it's going to take us through to our test area. So the test area that we saw previously on the top level of our data retention page. Here we can see all of the records currently that are going to meet those conditions, and as such, that rule is going to activate. Now, as you can see from the message at the top here, our rules don't activate straight away. They do work on a polling system. Typically, they're going to run in the early hours of the morning, GMT time. So you can see it's going to be run around 1 AM for this system. From this stage then, before activating my rule, if I would like to, I can jump in and see a record of who this rule is going to run against, just so I can cross-check and make sure that the right types of leads in this example are being actioned against my rule. Once I'm happy that this rule is set up and it's affecting the right people, I can go ahead and select Activate, and my rule has now been activated. And as you can see, in my active status column, I've gone from my no status that's in red now to my yes status, which is in green. If I also would like to see that test functionality outside of putting a rule live, I can jump into my test rule area here. And again, I'm going to be greeted with the same pop-up, which is going to allow me to have a look at the different records that are available to me to action against this rule. That brings me to the end of everything that I wanted to cover this afternoon for you in the data retention rules section. We've looked at how we set up the rules in the system and the consequences that they can have. So again, our advice here at OpenCRM, these rules can be quite serious in nature. So make sure as an organization, you've agreed your data processing and data retention policies beforehand. Get in touch with us if you need to, and we can assist you in setting up these rules in the system so that your data processing can happen automatically in the background, and you can work towards your compliance using OpenCRM.